And we're on. You are
Hello.
watching Coaching Chats with Marina and Caroline.
I'm Marina Baranowski of the Coaching Marina.
And I am Caroline Day from Safe Day to Change. How are you, my friend?
Wonderful. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year! Yes! Wishing all of our audience here and the YouTube family a Happy New Year.
Absolutely.
It's this is our first 2026 episode. And
Yes.
I think it's going to be a good one because we're going to be talking about why people hate Mondays. We call it the Monday scares, or the anxiety Monday, or the feeling that we have already on Sunday because tomorrow people go back to work
Yes.
and to take the kid back to school. And I know this is airing on January 5th. A lot of kids are coming back to school, and a lot of us or people in the corporate world are back to work.
Returning to
So,
work.
yeah. So, what are your feelings about Mondays?
When I was preparing for this topic, I really sat with myself in the time that I actually felt this emotion
Mm,
and this feeling, this Sunday scaries, this anxiety that came over me at the end, of the weekend and going into it. And interestingly enough, I feel like the emotion was more sadness
okay.
that came up, not necessarily anxiety. It was like the weekend was like it was a tease. The weekend was just an awful tease, and that I had to have these responsibilities, and now I need to go back to work and put my nose to the grindstone. Now, that comes from an operating system where what we grew up in and how we thought about work. We grew up to be loyal and resilient and reliable, um, and really that took precedent over fulfillment. So we were told, like, be grateful, you have a job, and like that's just how it is, you know. Like I have no choice. I have to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So this feeling that comes up is really a collective voice coming up saying that this is something that bothers us. And because it is okay and socially acceptable to say this, this is a way for us to release some of this.
What do you mean? What is a way to release?
Again, in my experience and how I've been brought up, and even just as the collective Gen X, boomer, we didn't complain. We're not supposed to express emotions. We're not supposed to feel the things. But being that this has been like everyone complains about it, so now it's okay to complain about it. It's socially acceptable to make a comment or to feel like that.
Mm,
And it's just one little way to be able to express it. Even though once you've expressed it, you do nothing with it. It just now becomes your norm. So every Sunday you feel like this instead of addressing it.
very interesting. You said a few things. So, I actually like the idea that we learn discipline and responsibility. It's not a bad thing, right? Like, I think what we learn from going to school and having a routine and waking up in the morning and preparing ourselves to, go do something that we're not doing over the weekend, for example, is not a bad thing. Because I did hear you say, like it's where you learn responsibility and where you learn, it's not a bad thing to learn those things. Let's put it out there, right? It's a great thing what work school is giving us, right? But we have also these feelings towards the actual going to these places. right? As a kid, as a teenager, and then as an adult, people have these feelings that, like you were saying, in the generations prior, were not really allowed to be expressed.
Right.
And now, I think, especially with millennials and Gen Z, they're giving themselves permission to be more vocal about their feelings towards, you know, how they feel about work
Everything.
and
Yes.
yeah, everything, exactly. But I don't think it's a bad thing to be able to for both, right? So we're talking about two different things. We're talking about the action of getting up, the action of going to work, and we're talking about the feelings of going to work or the feelings of having to do something. And there's definitely a difference, right? And I think people certainly feel when they feel that it's an obligation, when they feel that it's so painful, it's usually because they have simply accepted the fact or they have been conditioned, like you said, to believe that this is what you have to do for the rest of your life, or this is what you have to do in order to be able to pay your rent and in order to pay your mortgage, in order to have, you know, financial stability. That's how I grew up, for example, right? Like both my parents worked and it was just the thing to do. Everybody's going to go to work, everybody's going to go to school, and that's what you do. And it's okay to feel happy to go to these places, just like it's okay to feel sad to go to these places, right? But because it was less accepted before to be sad to go to these places, people were then forcing themselves into going, as opposed to like now, I can totally see somebody going, I'm not going to go today. I don't feel well. They're more likely to follow their feels more than what they have to do. But they're also, I think that there's also another generation where they're like, I want to feel happy to go to work. If I'm not happy, that can also be my compass, right? Going back to your gratitude word, the compass, right? Because if I'm not fulfilled in this job and I hate Mondays or I hate this feeling of sadness, of anxiety that is coming up, there must be something that is not aligned. If I'm not happy to be there on Monday, I must be, I must understand this feeling a little bit further. This
Yeah.
might not be because we have also learned throughout these years that not feeling happy is not only okay, but it's telling us something. It's information, right? And so when we get the information that we're not happy, then we can allow ourselves to go into a discovery or a journey of like, is it how I'm feeling today, or is it how I'm feeling about this work? Is it how I'm feeling about the people that are I work with, or is it about the work itself?
Right.
Right. So when you talk about sadness, because for you, what came up is sadness. What was sad about the work that when you were going? Like, where was the sadness coming from?
When seeking a job,
Hmm.
I wasn't seeking a job for fulfillment. I was seeking a job for money. I was seeking what job is going to pay me the most money that is going to afford me whatever it is that I want. I don't know what I want, but I'm just saying I need to make enough money to survive, right?
Hmm.
So when you have that mindset, whatever job that comes up that pays you, you jump on. It really doesn't have anything to do specifically with it, you feeling good about this job. And I fell into personally fell into the mortgage industry, which is very not me. It's a very financial, it's very numbers. I wasn't really great with numbers, but I saw that this was a way for me to make a lot of money. As long as I stayed with it, I learned, I did what I needed to do, I could make a lot of money in this industry. Um, the underlying feeling about working in this place was not a necessarily positive one. I've had positive experiences throughout the almost 3 decades that I was in that industry, whether because it was the people or it was the being able to help people. This was always the underlying thing. Well, I'm helping these people be able to get a home. Like this was part of my way of convincing myself that all the hard work and time that I was putting into this industry was for something, that there was a purpose for it. Okay. Um, so when it came to Friday, because it was Monday through Friday, Friday afternoon, I do my long commute, which in itself was a job. You're talking about, I think I was traveling like an hour each way. Um, I would get in the car and that would be arduous. And then I would get home and then there was more work to be done. So when Saturday morning came up, I was like, okay, I could rest for a minute. Nope, I guess I can't rest because I have all of these chores to do. There was never a rest within those moments. So by the time Sunday night came along, I was like, well, that was a tease. That was really short, or that went by too fast. Now I
Mhm.
have to do this again. I likened it to like grief on a schedule, sadness on a schedule. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to have that rest that I needed on those Saturdays and Sundays. And because there's always something to do. There's always, places to be. There's always, kids to jockey around or stuff. There was never a moment within that where I felt safe enough to say, I need a moment. I need a rest. Because if that was said or if that was needed, it was a sign of weakness. And I needed to persevere. I needed to endure. Because in the enduring is where I found worth. So this was a very interesting thing to me when I started doing, like you said, looking into this, really understanding, I'm feeling this way. What is this feeling trying to tell me? What am I supposed to learn from this feeling? I'm clearly not supposed to be working at this place. I've been through many companies. Some of it was the environment in the company that I didn't like. Some of it may have been a boss that I didn't like. Maybe it was me. Maybe I just didn't feel right in this environment. So I needed to look at it from an individual basis because each of us has the reasons why we don't like going to work or like something about work or what about the job we're doing we don't like. So individually, you have to sit with it and go, what is it trying to say to me? Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling anxiety? Am I feeling, um, I don't know, guilty? Whatever that emotion is, what is it trying to explain to you? And then there is where you could make and take actions in order to change those things. It may not be about changing a job. It just may
Mhm.
be about changing or shifting the way you have perceived this job that may change
Yeah.
it for you.
I love that you said that because I was just when you were talking, I was thinking about the modules that we learn from our coaching program with Jay Shetty Certification School. One of the modules was that sometimes people do have a purpose in life, and then we have to kind of help them. We assist people with drafting their path towards their purpose, but they already know the purpose. They just don't know how to execute the purpose. And then sometimes we don't see, the purpose right away. But then we get into a job where we do end up finding our purpose in the work that we're doing. So I'm sure a lot of people can relate to your story that, oh, I just went into this position because it made me money. I was just looking for any opportunity that were going to bring me money so I can buy the things that I want, right? So it can get me the life that I desire. And then you get there, some people may find their purpose there. And I feel like that maybe there was at some point that you found your purpose within your profession, right? And that really helped you carry on. And then you also said something very interesting that sometimes it's not even work. We think that it's work, right? We're so anxious about starting on Monday, but sometimes it's not related to work at all. It's just the fact that we have not rested enough, that we are just going about our days Monday through Monday. And we're not thinking, what do I really need? Do I need rest? Do I need a second for myself? Am I able to do this work and rest even in the middle of the week so that I don't feel exhausted or that I feel like having to do everything on Saturday and Sunday? Because let's be honest, like you said, we are anticipating rest when in reality, especially with kids, Saturday, Sunday is filled with activities. And then the rest that you were anticipating because it's Friday never happened. And then now you have to go back and it's Monday again. So I love what you said because there's so much in there, right? It has to do with sometimes we think it's the job that we chose. Sometimes it's really us not stopping and thinking, what do I really want in my life in general, in all parts of my life, in all areas of my life, not just career wise, but also other aspects. And then I would say even before we go into the feelings, how are we feeling is why do we chose the what we chose? Like how are we here?
Yeah.
Like how did you get this job? Like why did you choose it? And I love your vulnerability and your honesty and thank you. Like, most of us will get a job because we just want to make money and be successful and like be able to afford the house, be able to give our children what they want, right? So, and we don't usually, like most of us, don't go in thinking, but what do I want, right? Like, what if I were to start with something that I really want? Would that give me fulfillment and financial success? But we're so wrapped, especially when we come from families that is just telling us after you graduate, you need to go and get a job. And so it's very hard for us
No
to
pressure. No
no
pressure.
pressure, right?
Like, come on.
Exactly. Right after you graduate, you have to go get a job and you're going to have to pay for all of your bills. And so now you're thinking of the problems and of course you're going to start searching for things to just fulfill the lack as opposed to fulfill the purpose, as opposed to align with your skills and what your wants, right? And so that's really hard. So thank you for sharing that. Like, I could totally see how that's sad, right? Like how that makes you feel sad. When you started your journey of like analyzing, wait, like I don't feel great, especially because you had to drive too. A lot of people have never endured the fact that they have to
Yeah.
like drive for an hour,
It
you
was
know.
the only, it was honestly the only way. We didn't have remote jobs like that,
Could you
especially in the
move
90s
closer? Do
and
you
the
think like
2000s.
looking back, you could have moved closer to work?
Where where I lived, which was close to my ex's family, where the mortgage hub of where it was an hour away. So I had to, there was, I think later on I did find some other companies that were closer by. Um, but even then, it wasn't the length of the commute that was the problem. It was the commute that was the problem. It was what could I do? And I remember doing this, finding something that was going to make me feel good in the car on the way to work. So I would put together a mixtape of music that was soothing to me or that made me feel good or it was upbeat. just so I can get into a better mood for myself, knowing that all the things that I had to handle when I got to work. So that was one way for me to try to combat that. But we didn't have the same resources as we do now,
Mhm.
so we had to come up with ways for ourselves to make ourselves feel better. Some are good, some are bad, that we try to make ourselves feel better. But I like when you're saying like what made us get our jobs in the first place. And you had mentioned pressure. Pressure was a very big deal. Like I said, you're out of college, or even if you stopped going to college or you didn't go to college, you were immediately told you need to find a job and you need to find a job right now. So what was available was local. What could you drive to? And at that point, you're being very young. Um, you're not really, I know for myself, I didn't have the lessons of money in the proper way and what that means. So I was like, well, I need to make as much money as possible so I could do all the things that I want to do. And I didn't have a plan. I just went at it because the plan was is you just get a job. You get a job. It doesn't matter what job you have, just go get a job because that's where the money's going to come in. And instead of sitting with it going, what is it? Because I did go to college. I went to college for film, for
Mm.
film and communication arts, and I wanted to be behind the scenes and behind the camera and really be a part of that whole thing. And I came out of college and went into mortgages because it was money. Because I knew that whatever competition that there was out there, that I wasn't going to make a lot of money at first. And I wanted to make money right now. And so that became the priority for me,
Mhm.
you know. So with that pressure of you need to make money, you need to, and again, I wanted to be on my own. I didn't want to live at my parents' house, right? So I had to do everything in my power to make sure that I was enough and self-sufficient and surviving on my own.
Which I know a lot of people can totally relate to that, right? That's
Absolutely.
another thing. So not only people feel pressure to get a job right away, but they also feel pressure to get a job so that they can leave their house.
Yes.
And so there's that pressure too. So it's like not just a financial pressure, but also what do I need to do in order to get out of this situation? Like I need to live on my own now. I'm an adult. So now I need to be able to go live on my own. So that's a lot of pressure in itself, right? Like people may think there is no way that I'm going to be doing this and thinking about what it is that I want to do because they truly believe that what they want to do is not going to give them fast money or they're not going to get paid the way that they would get paid if they went into something else,
Right.
right? And so that's very relatable. For me, it was just the opposite. Like I told you, like I
I
graduated
figured.
with
I
I know
figured.
I graduated with a chemical engineering degree because I chose that path when I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad because I was only 14, right? Like I remember I really liked chemistry the first time I saw it. And I think looking back, I would have probably been a chemist. And my teacher, was a chemist teacher, she said, do chemical engineering because chemical engineering will give you a better future. If you do chemistry, you can only do so much. If you do chemical engineering, you can do so much. And she was right, by the way, right? Like I do believe in what she was trying to tell me. I remembered at opportunities, as a chemical engineer versus, a chemist. Chemist, it's very competitive because you're really a scientist, right? Not that that's impossible, not that that's not a good job, right? It's a great job. But she was looking at, like in a spectrum of like being able to make things and be able, to participate in other parts of, not just the chemistry itself. And I went for it without really knowing what it was about, right? And then I graduated and had no experience. So I went into being an intern. And then after being an intern, I went straight into manufacturing. And because I was in manufacturing, it wasn't something that I wanted to do. I liked parts of it, it wasn't all bad, right? Like I actually learned a lot. But I was starting to realize what I really liked and what I didn't like. And so I started looking for process improvement. Like I was looking at the safety part of the process without really knowing. Like for me, it was like, how can I make people safer? Like, is this make sense that the person is like going back and forth, and injuring themselves and et cetera. And so I was trying to think of ways that they could do things better so that they wouldn't injure themselves, so that they, because they were working 12-hour shifts, that it was already like the time that you work is already like kind of harsh. It was very manual labor. And so I was thinking of better ways of doing this. And so I learned that there's an entire field that, works with that, operational excellence and environmental health and safety. And so I ended up like just, the profession kind of pulled me away from manufacturing into safety management. But all of that is to say, even like because I chose it so early in my life and I just went with it, I didn't really challenge it.
Mm.
I didn't really challenge it. And then when I went in there, it kind of like I was guided into what I really wanted to do. I loved consulting because you're helping people. I loved that part of, being able to find solutions for people. It was, I loved it, and then 2020 happened and I wasn't able to help people as much as I wanted. And so I became a safety manager to be able to help everybody during the pandemic. And so it really was aligned in the way that I was helping people throughout. But then I started to learn what I didn't like. Can I tell a story of like how my Monday scaries were?
Yeah, of course. Like, no, you cannot. Of
So,
course, I would love to hear it.
so when I first got this job, like I went from consulting, like I said, to safety management during the pandemic, like I said, and I was working with, you know, um, a group of people that was for me very hard. I was trying to have, conversation with certain people, and I started to see this happen. Okay, I'm not going to go into details, but I remember it was so hard for me to work on Monday that I would either throw up physically, like I would get so sick to my stomach, or I would call in sick. So I would call in sick on Tuesday, almost every Tuesday, because it was already so hard to go to work on Monday. But then on Monday, I would have to like face the dynamic or the situation that I was getting sick almost every week. And it was very, very hard for me to kind of be in that situation. And I wasn't telling anybody because the idea was, like if you complain, then I didn't want to become the problem by complaining. If I told on somebody, then I will be that person. And there were so many beliefs around what was going on in my head that I kept it to myself, how much I was really struggling with work. And I wasn't telling anybody about it, you know, or people would come to me to tell their problems and they would be like not little problems, they would be big problems. Because I was in safety, they thought that, that was probably related to psychological safety. And I couldn't do anything about it because I was the safety manager in integrated facilities management and it was had nothing to do with it. And so it was really hard for me, I remember. And I was having really bad anxiety during that time. And that job lasted 6 months. I ended up quitting because it got to a point where, my husband was looking at me and going, you need to leave. You need to move. You need to go somewhere else. And so I know that there's people out there that are probably, suffering in silence, because of whatever reason, whatever they're going through at work, you know, um, because it's tough when you're in a position of management, for example, and you start, seeing situations that are unacceptable to you and maybe even unacceptable to the entire company. And it's a very sensitive topic, right? And you don't know how to go about it and, like how to. And so I didn't go about it in any way, like I was actually like, I poked my manager and I said, hey, like, there are certain things that are going on. Like, how do I approach this? I never came across this before. How do I do this? But I didn't really get a lot of assistance. And to be fair, is because I wasn't very explicit about, what I was seeing. But, again, I'm sure I'm not alone in this. I'm sure
Definitely not.
there are a lot of people out there that are suffering, because they see themselves in situations where they didn't really choose, that they wouldn't choose in any circumstance, and that they don't know what to do about it, right? So, as a coach, right, like if I were to come to you with that, Marina, like what would be like one of the first things that you could possibly help me with?
Anxiety in itself, regardless of what it is that you are anxieting over, needs to be said. It needs to be spoken. It needs to be discussed. What are you feeling? Where are you feeling it in your body? Where and why? We need to peel back the layers of what it is. In your discussion here, like what I am gathering is it's very where I was sad that I was living in a life that I wasn't aligned to without knowing that. And again, this is obviously before I had an awareness of that. Um, I was feeling sad for that. What you're discussing almost feels like a performance anxiety, like not knowing what to do in your job and doing it well. And if you don't do it well, then there's an issue and anxiety over that. This is a very interesting, you know, dynamic because it comes from the same root, but the emotion is almost it's a little we're feeling it differently. Do you grasp that? Like it's kind of like um where I was like upset that I had to go back to work. Like I was really upset that like I am here and I'm doing this. And this on the other side of it is I'm doing this thing, I'm working, I'm putting all of this time in. There's so much pressure, there's so much going on. W- Let's peel back. If we want, let's peel it back. Why do you feel that it is necessary to perform to that level? Why do you feel like you need to do all the things that you're doing? And again, this is all on an individual basis. Starting to ask yourself those questions for someone who is more, sad and asking yourself what is going to make it easier for you to do this job? Is this job something that is going to be fulfilling for you? If it's not fulfilling for you, why not? So there's a lot of questions here, and from an individual basis. Um, when one question is answered, there's always another why underneath it. So once we pinpoint what it is that is being felt in this moment, anxiety is terrible. Throwing up from anxiety is awful. I do have one client who did experience this, and I felt so deeply for her. And I felt that the reasons why were very personal uh, to her, but what came out of it was, yes, receiving an awareness as to why you're feeling that way, and it changed the direction Once like, okay, I'm feeling awful because, um I hated the way I was being scrutinized. I hated the way that I would work 10 to 12 hours and I was not receiving any recognition. Or I work so much and I do so much for this company and um I'm not receiving the raise that I want. Whatever it is that is giving you that anxiety, there's always a way out. There's always choices that can be made to make things easier, to make things softer. And a lot of this is naming it. At least for my clients, actually naming it, calling it what it is, instead of blaming it on someone else, is a huge first step to the healing of it.
Yeah. I mean, for anybody out there that is going through this right now, it's not okay,
No,
right? And there are ways of you to be able to speak with someone, depending on where you are or what the situation is. I do highly recommend that they speak with human resources, HR, if they
100.
can, and not be scared because it's not their fault. What they are seeing or what they are experiencing needs to be said so that people have a better perspective of what it is that is going on, and looking for professional advice, right? I think that's important too. If I were, if I knew or if I had talked to somebody at the time, I would hope that that person would lead me into somebody professionally to discuss this with, so that I could take the best actions,
Right.
right? Because at the end of the day, it is important that everybody is safe in any situation like this. When your pain or your anxiety is turning into something more physical, it needs to be addressed immediately, right?
Absolutely.
This person needs care. This person needs to understand where it's coming from. And I felt like I didn't have any place that was safe for me to discuss. But I did have a really good family system and a husband that was like, I know what's not healthy at all. And it's best that you go somewhere else and move, because you don't deserve to live this way. You don't deserve to be this unhappy week in, week out, and I think it was the best thing that happened. And it was also the opportunity that I had to start looking for the things that I really wanted in my life, to start really stop, it gave me the time to stop and see what was it that I really wanted. One important thing about, the Monday scaries, because I had them and I had lots and lots of them before I quit, was the fact that sometimes we're so conditioned to think about what it is that you want in the profession that you are, because stepping out is so far removed and completely not out of it's just not part of your life. And so sometimes, like even with current clients, you ask them, what is it that you want? They can only grasp what's just ahead of them. They can't dream further along, and so giving people the opportunity to go outside of their boundaries, the boundaries that they imposed in themselves, is also important. Because I remember, well, maybe it's just this place. And then I went to another place. And obviously, I never had that happen again, but I started to see patterns on, parts of the work that I didn't like anymore. And so I started to be more curious about what it is that I did like, what parts of the job I did like, what parts of the job I didn't like. But then I only focused on that, and so I urge people to go outside of the boundaries that they impose in themselves, because people can only sometimes dream 6 months ahead. Well, I can quit this and go to this other place and go to their competitor, but why? Like, if you can go completely outside of this. And it's not for everybody to just quit and do something completely different. I just want people to think, what do I really want to do for once? Like if there were no boundaries, what is it that you would want? I feel like, for example, when you graduated with a film degree, like there had to be some part of it that you really, really liked. Unless it was like me that was chosen so early on and you chose it because it's a beautiful,
Yeah.
place to be. And so I feel like people, when they're in the thick of it, they forget like that they have the opportunity to dream really big, because they're right there in the thick of it. And so they just want to get out of the mud to go to the dry place. And so they can't see outside of that forest. You know what I mean? There's a whole world outside of that forest. But
Yeah.
because you're in there, you're like, I just want to get out of the mud right now. After I get out of the mud, I can look, oh, I can look further. And I urge people, don't wait. Look further to the possibilities because there's so many possibilities out there. And you have so many skills that can be used elsewhere. And there's so many opportunities out there, you know, and maybe even that hope that there's something out there is going to give you motivation enough to get out of that thick mud into the dry land because now there's a place to go that is much further. You know what I mean? And I think that that's important for people to know because when I was in the thick of it, I was only thinking about getting out of the mud. And I wasn't, and that's why I think it took me so long to really develop into like what I really wanted to do because sometimes we're so closed off thinking of just what the immediate, because it's so unsafe, right? Like where you're going through at the moment is feels so unsafe that you just want to get to safety. You cannot even fathom that there is a world where it's also safe to dream and have more. But there is, and I think that's important for people to know that, especially if they're having the Monday scaries. What do you think?
So much comes up for me with what you just said. I know you speak to the fear paralysis, and a lot of this comes with when you are looking to make change, that is what comes up. It's like you're afraid that if you move just 1 inch, that everything is going to collapse. Nothing is going to be the same anymore. Once you start looking for a new job, what if the grass isn't always greener? There's all of these thoughts running through your head, so you stay in the madness because that is something that you know. And the anxiety comes because of the unknown. That fear comes from the unknown of what happens afterwards. And I encourage at least thought to it. Um, what could happen is something could be good out of it. Something could be amazing. You can meet the right people. You can interview. You may not get, the job, but, that could spurn off into something else. You don't know what opportunities are going to come for you. But until you pass by that fear or push through that fear and actually do something and make those changes for yourself, it may be really small at first. But if your goal is to be and do something else, working towards it is going to make you feel better, even if it is incrementally. So I love everything that you had said with that. And the other piece of this that I would really like to name is that just because you make a change doesn't mean that has to be a final decision. It doesn't, you could change again. We become very um and again, I know for our old operating system, which is, once you get a new company, then you're going to stick it out. You're going to do what you want to do. You don't necessarily, if it's not your fit, you have to be open to understanding, like, no, this is not a good fit. I'm going to do something else and I'm going to go someplace else that is going to value me, that is going to value my values, and it may be in the same arena as what you're doing now. It may be in a different place. Follow that feeling of that's interesting. Let me look into that. Let me see if that's something that I want to learn about. So this is opening up doors instead of it, being so closed in in the emotions and the feelings that you have and getting up, going to work, doing your Monday, through Friday, having your weekend, doing it all over again, or rinse and repeat, that kind of Groundhog's Day situation. And if you're feeling that every single Sunday, that's information. It's information. Learn from it. What is it trying to tell you? Understand it, trying to get the feeling from it. And then that is a wonderful first step.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, at first I was very scared of quitting, but then once I did, I think it was kind of liberating. I was like, I'm not going to stay in any place that I feel like it's not good because I do believe that there is a place out there that could be wonderful, you know? And I remember when it was, the third time that I was quitting, before the third time that I was quitting my job in less than a year, I remember my manager saying, like, you kind of want to stick it out for a year, like it's not going to look good for you. And I remember my answer was, you have daughters, right? And he goes, yeah, I have two daughters. And I go, if they were in a relationship for 6 months and they told daddy, I don't want this relationship anymore. I feel like it's not a good fit for me. I don't think that he likes me the way that I thought that he would like me. I don't think I like him the way that I thought I like him. Would you tell her, no, my love, stick it out for at least a year. I don't want you to have a reputation. Like I think you should stick around for a little bit more. Would you say that to her? And he said, no, I would say, get out of here immediately. You don't like him? Forget this guy. And I go, then why do we do that in our professional lives? We stay because we don't want other people to think anything of us. But
Mm,
it's not healthy. We wouldn't want that on our children. We
definitely
wouldn't
not.
want that on anybody. And so, no, like if it's not good, you have to get out of it. I think what can be also, interesting is that sometimes people are not really thinking how bad it is to move, but how bad it is that they chose the wrong thing to begin with, right? Because that could be also part of the anxiety. Like I chose this, I went through this, and then sometimes they kind of knew that it was not going to be a good place and they do it anyways. And then now they're stuck with a really bad job or a really bad boss or a really bad coworker, and then again, it goes back to all of these beliefs, right? Like I cannot leave. I was the one who chose this. I was the one who picked this place. I was the one who accepted the job. I knew, what I was going to be up against. But the truth is, like you said, you can change it. You can change it yet again. You can say, this, I thought it was going to be something, and he ended up being something else. I was sold something and I got something different. And that's okay, you know? And so, not to be afraid of that. And I know it's looked upon. I know it is, right? I know people are like, no, you still have to stick it out. Like it says a lot about you not being consistent, you know. But the truth is, you have to listen to yourself. You have to listen to what your body's telling you. You have to listen to what your gut is telling you. In one of these, I do remember writing on the paper um, as I was interviewing, I remember writing on a piece of paper, do not go to this one. And guess what? I ended up going to that one because I interviewed in other places and I didn't get accepted at any other. I didn't get an offer in other places. And so I ended up accepting a position because I got offered the position. Whereas the other places I was going, I didn't get offered the position. So I can totally see how people will stick it out because of that, right?
Yeah.
Like this was the person who gave me the job. So I'm going to just stick it out. And then they ended up having these anxiety like this, oh, I can't believe it's Monday
Yeah.
tomorrow. I hate this job or whatever. And so, I mean, so many
It's so
different.
true, but you're choosing a job over desperation or just feeling like you need to be someplace new. Ah, just you take that intuition. I love that you wrote that down. That was a piece of gold for you and you went against it. We all have intuition. We all have that gut feeling that we get, don't do this, don't do that. We always we get these things and
Some more
sometimes
than others. Not
some more than
everybody
others,
has.
that's true. But for the most part, you when you're making that decision and you have two, let's say two things in front of you, and you have one that's harder and one that is more aligned to you, and you're like, yeah, I really like that, but I might have to struggle a little more, or I might have to, do this, that, and then you have the other one who's like, this is going to be a lot of money, and it's going to be easier for you to do that, and you're like, I'm going to go with the easier one because that is what's most socially acceptable. But your whole gut is telling you that this is what you liked. That other one, that other thing that
Yeah.
you had in front of you. So by choosing the things that even if it's incrementally a little bit more aligned to you, where you're like, I like that, choose that because that is
Mhm.
your gut telling you that this is where your next opportunity is, your next learning experience, your next whatever is coming up next for you. And I honestly wish that I listened to myself more throughout my whole life because I have had those, you should be doing that. Like it was almost yelling at me, you should be doing that. And I'm like, but this over here. Like, but and I feel like when I finally woke up to it, to those intuition nods, going, it it did, it's a harder road, but it's so much more rewarding. It's so much more fulfilling for me. You know, when we were talking about our old jobs, the thread that we wanted to help people. We wanted to, like, I wanted to help people, get a home. I wanted to help people understand what mortgages were. I wanted everything had to do with, just helping. I felt good in the helping. I wanted to have that good customer service that I would sit and talk to borrowers and people who are on the phone and just letting them know and just giving little pieces of myself. And that made me feel good, not the job itself, but this piece, that thread, when I was trying to figure out what I was most aligned to and what I wanted to do next, that is what came up for me. I wanted to help people, you know,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
love that that's how, you felt the same way. So it doesn't matter what industry it is, that same, like, we just want to help.
We just wanted to serve for sure. I
Yes,
think,
absolutely.
but one thing for sure happened to me when I was quitting all of these jobs, at some point I did think it was me. I did
Oh, yeah.
think, like I still, which it was. Okay, I'm going to take 100% responsibility, right? Like it was me.
Yeah.
It was information. Every time that I went in, knowing that I should have not gone in, and at some point I said, I don't want to stick it out like everybody else does. But at the same time, I'm still not aligned 100% in what I should be doing. And shame on me for not looking for what it is, because I have the opportunity to see what it is that I want and seek opportunities that I like. What am I so afraid of? What am I so afraid of? And so I had to face what I was afraid of because until I did it, I was still prioritizing money, prioritizing, like I still needed to pay the bills, right? And so every single time I was like, well, I don't like this, but it's going to pay my bills. Oh, I don't like this, but it's going to pay my bills. And I was like, I need to stop that. What is it that I really want? you know I need to find what it is that I want so that I stop chasing money and I start attracting it
Yeah.
with what I actually like. because I have the skill, you know. But the thing is, I knew also the skill that I had developed in work, you know what I mean? And so I was relying on that skill. But I was like, is there a place where this skill can actually be utilized and valued? And so the last place that I went, the last biotech that I worked at, the pharma company that I worked at, I remember coming in feeling very welcomed, feeling like my skills were valued, that I had something to add to the company. And guess what? I didn't want to leave after 6 months. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I finally understood that it wasn't me, and I'm glad that I stuck it around, like that I decided to continue because I was trusting a skill that I had. I really know a lot of, the compliance work that comes with laboratory, with research and development. And I had studied a lot and I didn't want that to go away. I just needed to find a place where I could help people with it. You know what I mean? And so that's why I stick. And I remember, like, after a year, I was like, maybe I want more. Maybe I want to explore, like helping people abroad. I remember I traveled. So it was it was great, like but I remember like the most important thing, like you said, was to help people. Would I go back? Possibly, like if it is the great people, if but I want to make sure that I say yes, like you're saying, like your gut is saying yes, it feels aligned because I still love, there are so many aspects of my job that I absolutely loved. There, nothing is lost, is what I'm actually trying to get to the bottom of. It's like nothing is lost, like you can use whatever you learned still today,
Very
right?
true.
You don't have to completely rest that and leave that behind because nothing is lost, right? Everything is utilized, right? And so I think it's a beautiful thing that you learn through, even through the Monday scaries, that you can value yourself, that you can start thinking, if this is not working, what would work for me? What part of this can I utilize and what part of it I don't like? Can I be completely honest with myself? And I remember hiring a coach at this time, and it was beautiful because the coach was talking to me very honestly about what is it that you really like about what you're doing right now? And what is it that you don't like? And then she says, what if it doesn't change? It was one of those jobs that I stayed for 6 months. And she says, and what if this does not change? Are you going to keep on accepting it? How much is too much? And I was like, yeah, that's true, you know. And so having someone to guide you, is so important.
Absolutely. Very
It's
important.
it's valuable because it's so hard to do it yourself sometimes. It's so hard to do it without help or even like thinking that you don't have anybody to help you.
We're
That can
talking
be
about
tough.
being in the mud, right? You're in the mud. You can't move. You're stuck. And
Yeah.
even though you may know or have some understanding of what it is that you need to do, you need someone to be able to help you out of that mud. So you, having those discussions and being able to formulate a plan. So you need the money, you want to make sure that you can pay your bills. Great. Well, you can stay at your job, but let's do some things in order for you to plan to get out of that job or to, change your career altogether or you to go to school. Like there's many ways to get out of this mud. And sometimes you just need someone to be able to help and hold your hand and guide you through and get you out of it. I like using that metaphor of the forest and the trees because you can't see the entire picture when you're standing, and hugging that tree. You can't see the whole thing. And sometimes you just need someone to show you, look, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that this is a huge, beautiful forest, and you're only standing next to it with face up against the bark on a tree. You can't see everything that's going on. So, coaching has been invaluable to me. It's been amazing because you're able to give someone that different perspective, all different perspectives. Being in the Monday scaries, anxiety ridden, it doesn't just happen on Sunday night. It happens Monday night. It happens Tuesday night. It happens Wednesday night and Thursday and so forth. And every time that you are getting ready to go to work and you're having this feeling, it's again, we were saying this is information. It is your first wake up. It is your first sign that you should analyze this, that you should take a look at what it is that is making you feel this way. What is making you unhappy? What is making you feel anxiety? And starting to peel back those layers. And then having that, what can I do to make things easier for me while I'm making a transition?
I love that. Yes. Yes, yes to all of it.
Yes,
For
yes, yes.
sure. Because then it will also give them an opportunity to see elsewhere, right? It's kind of like what you're saying. Once you're able to look forward instead of just looking at the mud, you're looking forward. It's like somebody's calling you to look forward so that you look at something else. Because while you're focusing on the problem, you're only going to see the problem. You have to look up and look elsewhere in order to see something else. And I think that that's why this work is so invaluable, like you said. And I think it's so beautiful what you said. It's not just Monday scaries, it's Tuesday scaries and Thursdays. I remember, like in facilities, people almost don't want to go to work on Fridays because I don't know why everything happens on Friday. A pipe bursts on Friday. Something happens on Friday. And it's like Friday at 3, 4 p.m. where everybody is going home. Now you have to go back and fix something because something happened. And so it's interesting how that happens. You're right. It's not just one day. And you gave really valuable, tips. But let's talk a little bit about, when it's something else like school, right? For example, I have a 10-year-old right now who does not like Mondays because Monday you have to go back to school. And you could totally like hear that, it's not the greatest experience that she's having right now at school as a fifth grader because I remember I loved school and I wanted to go to school no matter what. Like if I had a fever, I would hide it from my mom because I did not want to miss school. So I was the
Great.
kid that, the teacher would find out that I have a fever because I'm not screaming and being happy. And they go, "What's going on?" "Oh my gosh, you got to go home." And then they would call my mom, and my mom would be like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And I'm like, "Because I didn't want to miss school." I loved going to school. God.
I didn't.
So,
Whether
so
I
my
was
daughter
sick or not, I was sent to school, so it didn't matter.
Yes. I know, right? It's the opposite. And so my daughter's like that. My daughter does not like to go to school. And my daughter's like, like, "Oh, I don't want to go to school." Like, I could totally see how it's not. But it's, unlike a job, right? Because she's going to school. Like, how do you feel about that when they have the Monday scaries, but it's like to go to school as opposed to go to work?
When it comes to school, there's many different aspects of school too. So you have the children that you go to school with, you have the activities during the school, the learning part of it. Is interesting because if you enjoy the subject, then you enjoy the topic, then you're there and you're enjoying it. If you don't like it, like I didn't like any of it. The only thing that I really enjoyed doing was English. I enjoyed reading, I enjoyed writing. But everything else, the science, the social studies, all that stuff, I couldn't stand it. The memorizing things, couldn't stand it. But what was interesting to me during that time was that it allowed me to join hands with some of the kids that we all hated school like that. So we all were just like, okay, we're going to do this. Recess was a beautiful thing. We were able to kind of just, hang out and be free. So highlighting the things that are good in the school, whether it be a friend, whether it be a subject that they enjoy. A lot of times you ask kids, like, what's your favorite subject? And they're like, PE, like, or gym's my favorite subject, and it just highlighting the things that are really awesome, and even if it is broken down by day, what was really awesome that happened today at school, and then tell me something that really crappy, that happened in school. But having them highlight the goodness and over the badness gets them excited a little more about going to school. And that is, unfortunately, something that is required to do. So they have to go. In fifth grade, I'm just trying to think back. Instruments, starting to play an instrument was fun for me. So I enjoyed that part of going to school, practicing. I started out with the flute. I did that for a year, and that didn't work out well for me, I will tell you. And then in sixth grade, I wanted to join the orchestra, so I started playing the viola. And that felt, I was like, I love this. I love having it in my hand. I love the bow. I love the movement, the music, all of it. And that is something that I can hold on to, knowing that I was going to go to practice, or again, the drama was big for me too. So I just found things, and I think talking to your child about the things that are enjoyable um, more often might spur them to get some tiny bits of excitement going to school every day.
Oh, I love that, my friend. Thank you. I
Well,
will. I think that that's such a good recommendation. And no, they're not all required to go. Like some kids do go to, they stay at home and do the home um
it's still
but they
school. Whether you're
learn.
doing it at home or whether you're going to school, you're still got to do these lessons.
She hasn't proposed to do an at-home school yet, but you're right. I think it's important to, like highlight the things that they do like. She is taking up flute. So Tuesdays are her favorite day at school because it's the day that she plays the flute, even though they just learn a little bit every day. But so yeah, she does like that. And I think you're right. I think it's important to highlight the things that they do like. And sometimes we forget about that, right? Like the kids are always so focused on what didn't happen at school or a fight or something like that. And it is, a time of exploration. 10, 11-year-olds are really changing their personalities right now, and not in a bad way, but they're like exploring things are changing in their bodies. And so it's, and they also don't understand. And so I totally, it's a difficult time, for some.
Easy.
So I hope that she can get out of this. So yeah, what a great recommendation, right? Like I think even for work, right? If it's not something that you can do immediately, if you can't quit immediately, or if you can't just give up immediately, right? You still have, your responsibilities and your bills to pay or whatnot. If you are going to work, it's important to focus on the things that you do like. And so maybe even having a conversation with your boss and saying, look, I I'm not 100% happy right now, and I think it would be great if we can talk about, some opportunities for me to enjoy work a little bit more. I'd love to be a part of a project that includes X, Y, and Z. I feel like I would be way more fulfilled if I did something like that. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be full time. I could just do a few hours of this every day because this really does bring me happiness.
Yeah,
And I think it's not only a good recommendation, but it's also going to put yourself in a position with your boss of like trusting them and also giving yourself an opportunity to shine where you wouldn't before if you didn't speak up about it. So I love that.
me too. No, but it's true. Like you, when you're a child, you do the same thing as you do when you're an adult, right? You're like, I got to do this thing. I got to go to school. I have to learn all these things. And then it peels off into, doing the job. But by having small actionable steps like going to your boss, that might be a good first step if you want to change the dynamic of your job. If you're looking to leave anyway, what do you got to lose, right? I mean, if having a conversation, being open and honest with, the people that you work for, or work with,
Yeah.
might be something that would be beneficial. And if it's not, you're looking elsewhere anyway. So this is a beautiful couple of steps. Thank you for all of those tips.
Yeah, likewise. This was good. I mean, I feel like, given that Monday scaries are not the greatest subject to talk about because it brings people so much anxiety. Oh no, like some people start feeling it even like Saturday night, because they know that Sunday's so close, you know, and, but
The
I think,
weekend's almost over. The weekend's almost, it's like Friday night. The weekend's over.
yeah. And so, another thing that I would say, because you touched on a point that is so beautiful, is that, it's not just Mondays, it's like really every day. Giving yourself something to do that you like every day also really helps because sometimes you feel stuck because you're not doing more of what you like to do. And so you're feeling stuck thinking about the things you don't like to do because you're doing more of that. And so when you do more of what you like than what you don't like, sometimes that actually helps as well. So
Definitely.
finding a hobby, like finding something to do after work or, find something to do at work, joining a club at work. Maybe that will actually enhance your well-being and make your life at work a little bit better too. So there are ways for sure for
Definitely.
you to increase the amount of things that you do like in your life so that the little that you're doing that you don't like or the much that you're doing that you don't like doesn't feel like it's all that you're doing in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's it. I mean, when you're talking about one, like you said, one action, whether it be one calming action or, one like grounding action, that might be like, meditation or yoga or something. If you taking those moments, something that is going to fulfill you in some way, and that could be done incrementally every day throughout the week, so that pressure is being alleviated, so you're actually getting some sort of rest, some sort of respite for the soul, because right now you're just going and going and going and having one maybe familiar comfort, that you can give yourself, in honoring yourself, is another great, wonderful first step.
And what a great first episode of the year, right? For
I
people to
totally agree.
I mean, I think it's important. Like, if people were to listen and have some takeaways from
Yep,
this, and start the year like, oh, you know what? I can think of something that I can do in order for me to be happier. You know what? Like, I can start thinking about the good things that I do at work or at school. You know what? I can start talking to my boss about new opportunities. You know what? I can't start looking elsewhere and start looking at, what goes beyond the trees. I think that that's a great way to start a new year,
I
right?
completely agree. You're wonderful. You're absolutely
Well,
wonderful.
I want to wish you a happy 2026, my dear friend. I
Oh,
look
to
forward
you
to doing
too,
this with you
darling.
next year. And there's way more to come. Again, if you want to talk about another topic, please let us know. This
Please.
year is all yours. So let us know what topics you guys would like to move on with so that we can talk about it here. And thank you for being with us. Until next
Thank
Monday.
you.
Mwah.
Bye.